Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University of California, thank you for tuning in today for our UC Alumni Career Webinar. My name is Cheryl Lott. I am a proud UCLA alumna and shareholder and Deputy General Counsel at Buchalter. I am also currently serving as the Alumni Regent to the UC Board of Regents. I am honored to moderate today's webinar on a topic that is impactful for so many, and for me in particular. This program is part of a UC-wide effort to unite and support alumni across our 10 campuses. We aim to equip you with the information, insights, and connections necessary to launch, grow, or expand your career. Throughout today's session, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our speakers by clicking the Q&A button on your screen. We will try to answer as many questions as possible during the event. Our discussion today is focused on balancing work, life, and family. Our panel will share personal experiences and insights along with tangible tips and advice to help you navigate your responsibilities as a professional and a parent. This topic is of particular import to me because I have been juggling remote work and virtual school for my son for the majority of the last year and a half. Even before the pandemic and ensuing shutdown, finding the right balance between career and family was not easy. But the challenges were most certainly highlighted during this time. I am grateful to our panelists for spending the time with us today to discuss a number of very important topics on this issue. I am joined today by 4 inspiring UC alumni. Charla Batey is a senior communication specialist at Cox Communications. Charla is a trained print journalist with an MBA in marketing and an accreditation in public relations from the Public Relations Society of America, PRSA. Her passion for communications, creativity, and community guides her professional and personal life activities. Charla sits on the UC-Irvine Black Alumni Board of Directors as Communications Chair. She is a Director at Large on the Board for Orange County Human Relations and a member of its Marketing Committee. And she is also the 2021 immediate president of Orange County chapter of PRSA. She proudly lives in Irvine with her family and is a graduate of UC-Irvine class of 2007. Our next panelist is Corbin Contreras, who graduated from UC Davis in 1993 with a degree in sociology and organizational studies and Latinx studies, and in 1995 went on to earn her master's degree in sociology and is also a PMI project management professional. During her time at UC Davis, Mari was part of the Mecha Chicanx Latinx graduation planning group and worked at the Chicana Latina Research Institute in addition to serving as an English tutor and teaching assistant. Mari is the daughter of Mexican immigrants with no formal education. She came to the United States with her parents as a young girl and is a naturalized citizen. Mari was the first, but not the last, in her family to attend college. Currently, Mari resides in Stockton, California, and is a senior DEI manager for Blue Shield of California. Since graduation, Mari has been an active alumna and has enjoyed giving back to UC Davis. She is a CAAA Life member, CAAA Board of Directors member, UC Davis and UC system-wide Chicanx Latinx Alumni Association member. And she has served on the UC Davis Parent and Family Council. Mari is not the only Aggie in the family. Her daughter, Ariel Corbin, graduated in 2019. Next, we have Silva and Viking Karageozian, our parent couple who we're happy to have together here with us today to share their perspective on co-parenting. Silva is a graduate of UC-Irvine in political science and government. She worked in the environmental field in public relations and later earned a multi-subject credential and taught school in LA and Orange County. She left the classroom and joined digital networks where her work focused on the integration of technology and education. Silva's volunteer work in her local community includes serving as a docent at the Orange County Museum of Art. She was a co-chair of the Director Circle for Armenian Studies at UC-Irvine and also chartered the UC-Irvine Armenian American Alumni Chapter. She is a co-founder of Amarillo Swimwear a bathing suit line designed and entirely produced in Southern California. This brand new collaboration is an exciting opportunity to work with her college-bound daughter. Viking is co-founder, president, and CEO of Allegra Ophthalmics, LLC, a company that specializes in treatments for macular degeneration. Viking is an industry veteran in ophthalmics drug development with more than 25 years experience building, leading, and fundraising companies in the ophthalmic pharmaceutical space. An ophthalmic surgeon by training, Viking is the co-founder of 3 ophthalmic biotech companies since 1993. He has been the inventor or co-inventor of numerous ophthalmic pharmaceuticals with more than 82 patents issued on his drug discoveries. He graduated from the University of California, San Diego with degrees in biochemistry and cellular biology and received his medical degree from Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston. After completing an internship at UCLA, he completed his residency at UC-Irvine. Charla, Mari, Silva, and Viking, thank you so much for being part of today's webinar. Without further ado, let's dive into our first of our prepared questions. So let's start off our conversation today by hearing a little bit more from each of our panelists on their professional journey and why this topic is so important to them. Charla, can we start off with you?
Sure. Thanks, Cheryl, and thank you everyone for being here. Yeah, I went to UCI and graduated in 2007 from undergrad and was well on my way to, starting my career as a young professional. Met a man who already had a 15-month-old son at the time. I was 23 or 24 and, love struck. And we started dating and got together, and eventually we've been married for a while now. And so I became a step parent at 24 to a 15-month-old. And I was still in the middle of trying to build my career, go to grad school, get out there in the community and serve. So it's been quite a journey in the last 13 years. He just turned 13 last week. And now we also have a 4-year-old. So there's been a lot of juggling and a lot of pivoting. And I always like to keep it real with, we all know this is a wild ride of parenting and working. And I like to say #make it work from time to time, because every day is an adventure, but my children are the most beautiful things in the world.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mari, can you share a little bit about yourself and why this is an important topic for you?
I actually was in the work world for a little over 2 years before she was born. And I went back to work when she was 6 weeks old. And so that, that was, it was challenging. I had certain priorities. I wanted to continue nursing her, and I was already in a leadership position in a pretty demanding job. And I had to find ways to integrate both work and life and parenthood, or all of those things at the same time, in a very demanding job with a young child. And finding how to find that balance also with her dad, who is now my ex-husband. So I've had the experience of parenting and being married, and also then parenting starting at the age of about 8.5 as a single divorced parent, navigating that landscape while still working, continuing to have a very demanding job, and just as Charla said it so well, just making it work, finding ways to make it work. For me, this topic is so important because that's just a fact of life. Most of us are working parents, and it's not easy. And I don't think we talk enough about the challenges of growing your career while nurturing your relationships with your children, with your spouse, hopefully with your friends and your family. We tend to glamorize things and talk about, bringing home the bacon and cooking it too, and making it seem like it's supposed to be easy. I don't think we have honest conversations enough about the fact that, yes, it's very joyful, but it's damn hard. It's really hard. And I think we do ourselves a disservice by not having really honest conversations about the challenges and how do we make it work? Because it's not really a balance. I think that's an illusion. It's really about figuring out how do we make it work and get fulfillment, in that journey. So that for me, that's really why I wanted to participate in this discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Silva and Viking?
Thanks. Hi, this is Viking Karageozian and my wife, Silva. I would agree with what Mari said, is no matter how you look at it, this is not easy. Trying to set high standards for your kids and your family and your relationship with your spouse, and trying to have kids that have high standards and high expectations and go to school and do well and don't turn out to be terrible people. This is not very easy, no matter how you slice or dice it. Our experience, Silva and I both grew up in Southern California. A couple of things that made it a little bit easier is we come from very similar backgrounds. We're both Armenian, but we're both from here. Are from similar backgrounds with somewhat similar expectations. I think for us, just starting a little bit from, what happened from our relationship versus school and work and family was, medical school was all consuming. We were dating towards the end of my medical school training. And I specifically, as much as we fell in love, I specifically said, you do not want to get married to me until I finish, because I have a terrible lifestyle. I mean, we're 100 hours a week, and you're not, you're very unhappy and grumpy and have all kinds of crazy hours and sleep schedules or lack of sleep schedules and things like that. So as much as we could, we ended up having a really long engagement. I mean, I was committed to Silva and she was committed to me. But one of the things that we purposefully did was we didn't get married until like a couple months before I finished my medical training. And I still had, and even with that, I still had more training for ophthalmology, but at least we got kind of out of the worst of it. Because I said, it's having a good marriage, having a good relationship, being on the same team was really, really important for us. And a big part of that was, well, what's another year or a year and a half or two
to wait before marriage and then kids and all that. So as far as career.
Right. So I ended up doing two things. I ended up practicing in Huntington Beach, California, and North Orange County for about 18 years in a medical practice, doing cataract surgery and LASIK and things like that. And at the same time, because I'm a masochist, I also started my first biotech company almost at the same time. And I mean, there's no way that if we didn't have really good communication and kind of figure out, okay, who's going to do what and how much can you be involved with this? And I need you to make sure you do homework with the kid. I'm the science person and does all the science homework with the kids. She's the reading and writing and social sciences person, and kind of just divide and conquer. It would not work. And it's still really hard anyway.
Yeah, we have 3 children. So once, after having the first child, we made that decision. And it was hard for me to say goodbye to work and make that decision to just stay home, because we thought we'd like to have a bigger family. So knowing full well how hard it is, that decision was made that I would go ahead and take a hiatus from work. Which,
I mean, you put so much effort into it, and you felt very guilty about leaving work. So, it's the right decision to make.
Right. And then the friends that did have a foot in both worlds, I was torn. So I feel for my working mom friends that had so many struggles, like Mari has described, and also even Charla. But it's, the grass is never greener. Yeah. Either side, there's a lot that you've got to deal with. So I think should we stop? Yeah.
Thank you both.
On and on.
Thank you all for that. Now, do you guys have any examples or tips and tricks on how you've been able to balance work, life, and family? And going this round, I think maybe kick it to Mari first.
Figuring out what were priorities for me. And of course, that that evolves with time. But what I really wanted when I became a parent was to work for a company where I could integrate work and family and life. For me, it was not negotiable to, to continue nursing my daughter. I also wanted to be able to volunteer in her classroom and to go on field trips with her once she started school. And so for me, it was about just figuring those kind of things out and ensuring that the way I worked, the company that I worked for, and the job that I had with them enabled me to be able to do those things. And it wasn't easy. My daughter was born in 1997. And today, when you work at different companies, you see a lot of mother's rooms or nursing rooms where you can go and pump, and bank breast milk while you're working and your child is in childcare. That we didn't have that when I started working. After I had my daughter, I literally had to go pump in a supply room. And I had to put a sign outside the door so that people wouldn't come in. I had an instance once where I had to work at a different location, and I went and asked the manager of the site where they had a room for moms, nursing moms, to be able to pump. And he told me that I needed to just go to the bathroom. And I said, there are no outlets in the stalls. And he said, well, you can pump by the sink. And I kind of gave him a little bit of a piece of my mind, because I asked him if he would go pump his body parts by the sink in front of everybody, and that when he was prepared to do that, I would do it too. And he looked very shocked, and then offered me his office, which did have privacy. But sometimes you just have to advocate for yourself and let people who make ignorant comments like that know that, you know what, that's not acceptable. And what I'm asking for is not outrageous. So that was one thing that for me really helped. I think also just figuring out what my boundaries are. And again, it's a continuous evolution and a work in progress, because I suffer from middle child syndrome, and I was raised in a very traditional Latino household, and when you have any level of success, you're expected to help your parents and your family a lot. It's not a Latino thing. I know it's very common in the Asian communities and the Black communities. I call it the success tax. So I've had to learn over the years to figure out what my boundaries are, strategically say no, and ignore the guilt of saying no, and choosing me more often. Like Rich is really saying no to helping others sometimes so that I can have time to take care of myself and to do the things that give me joy, so that I'm not just working myself to the ground. I don't really believe in the concept of work-life balance. I believe in what Charla said, and it's just finding ways to get the things that are important to you done, and doing so without, grinding yourself to the ground, and hopefully getting some joy out of life, and just being happy and fulfilled. So that's kind of some of what I have found to be helpful. It works for me, but it may not work for others. I think we each have to find what works for us, experiment, and just continuously refine.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There's a lot packed into that. So thank you for sharing your sort of real world and real life experiences, and some of the things that I know we'll end up touching on in other areas of our discussion. Silva and Viking, do you guys want to share some examples or tips and tricks on how you can sort of make it work?
I think the most important thing is when we first got married and we started thinking about having a family and how we're going to make all this craziness kind of come together. I think the two things I would say was good communications, which you have to keep constantly doing because everyone gets distracted and forgets and loses perspective, myself all the time. And then the other one is reminding ourselves that we're on the same team. I mean, I cannot emphasize enough how important that is, that no matter what the problem is, whether the kids are driving us crazy or we're having problems with our parents or someone's having a health scare or work scare or whatever it is to be like, to make sure that we're on the same team, always, always, always to be on the same team, so that the kids can't get between the two of us. Or if my parents are doing something that's, that's out of the boundaries, as Mario was saying, of what's acceptable. In Armenian families and with our families close by, everyone's in each other's business constantly. That's good sometimes and not so good sometimes, where every decision ends up becoming a decision by consensus. Are you sure you should buy a house? Are you sure you want to start this practice here? Are you sure you're not overdoing it? Are you sure? Even to the, can you handle the third kid? I mean, you get stuff like that where everybody is in each other's business. So the success so far for us has been,
boundaries for sure.
Boundaries for sure.
Yeah.
And Team Karageozian is what we had to decide really early on. I mean, even, it's embarrassing to say, but for anybody who's seen Big Fat Greek Wedding, that was our wedding. Everybody stuck their fingers in every single thing that we did. And that's actually when the Team Karageozian came to be, because literally at our wedding, our mothers were at each other's throats. Anyway, we digress. But yes, exactly. Career-wise, what ended up happening is with this kind of team effort, we try as much as we can to communicate a lot and compartmentalize and say, okay, in the beginning, when we first had kids, Silva would be exhausted, rightfully so. And I would come home from doing surgery all day and say, here, take the baby, figure out what to do. I'm exhausted. And we're like, okay, we had to figure out a balance, because fair enough, she was exhausted, but I'm like, you can do that on any day you want, except for the day that I'm doing surgery. So we would kind of trade off, what worked for her and what worked for me. It wasn't always what she wanted or always what I wanted, but some give and take, and some bickering, and some, it's not always, sunshines and rainbows and unicorns, but the point being is, in general, good communication and reminding ourselves we're on the same team has been very helpful at keeping parents to play nice, having the kids not gang up on us, and then splitting some of the all the responsibilities. Even now, we have one going to college in a couple of weeks, and one in high school and one in middle school right now, and everybody needs something different. So sometimes Silva's doing the bulk of it, sometimes I'm doing the bulk of it. It just depends on our schedules, but with lots of communication and respect in that communication, that, look, it's not fair for it to be overly lopsided for very long, and try to keep it that way. So it's a long answer.
Fantastic. No, thank you so much. That was very, I'm keeping notes over here so I can sort of hopefully summarize some of these key points as we go forward. Charla, how about you?
I echo what everyone said. I would also say, I was young when I became a step parent, even though we weren't engaged or married at first. I fully committed to my husband, or my now husband, and my stepson. And so we grew up a lot together in that time. And unfortunately, we're transplants to California, so we don't have our family here. So for my husband and I, Rob, it was really about proximity to my stepson. At most times, it was an interesting economy. So I had multiple jobs. He had a job that he was out a lot too. So we really had to block our calendars and make sure he was covered for daycare and make sure that I could pick him up. And so that was a lot of open communication for me with my various bosses and my various jobs to say, hey, listen, I have a under 2-year-old that I need to go pick up, and I'll be back, but I have to pick him up and then drop him off here. And also we were co-parenting with my stepson's biological mom. So I would say that my stepson, my husband, and I kind of grew up together in really blocking out calendars and logistics. And then here comes our now 4-year-old daughter. And she kind of blew that up a little bit in terms of she's on her own path. And we all kind of had our system worked out. And then we went back to having a newborn again. And so we're still trying to figure that out, and kind of similar to Silva and Viking, she has needs and he has needs. I will say the other thing I do is I really try to set boundaries. I'm not always good about it, and that goes professionally and personally. But I've had a few times when I'm like, I have just reached my breaking point. It is not cute. I'm going to set boundaries. I like to read. I like to do Pilates. I like to hike. I will block that out on my calendar, or I will just be like, you guys, I got to go. So please do that for yourselves. I think it's so important, especially now with what we're all facing with the pandemic.
Fabulous. Well, I have a couple of takeaways that I want to summarize really quickly before we get to our sort of next conversation in this. But first thing is stand up for yourself. And I heard that in different ways from both Mari and Charla, whether it's standing up for yourself in relation to a boss who doesn't understand, you know, why you need X, Y, or Z, or whether it's standing up for yourself and saying, I need this time for me to be a whole person. That's really important. Another thing that I heard was that it's different for everyone. And so it's not a one size fits all, just commit to finding what works for you. And if X doesn't work, then that's okay. Go on to the next and keep on trying to work at that. Another common thread that I heard from Silva and Viking and from Charla is that, you know, teamwork, you really need that teamwork. And whether that's the communication that Charla talked about, communicating who's picking up who when, blocking out the time and having that communication to making sure everything's covered, or the teamwork with, you know, not letting the kids play off each parent. I think that can really apply to different scenarios, whether it's with biological parents or when, as Mari said, when you're dealing with you know, maybe a separation of parents and dealing with the other parent, or if it's both parents in the home and it's, you know, my son, for example, already knows if he asks dad and dad says no, and then he comes to ask me for a different answer, he already knows he's in trouble. That's game over. You know, you can't do that, right? Mm-hmm. Just asking the other parent is enough to get you in trouble, right? So, you know, and setting boundaries, that was another that was really important that I heard there. So thank you all for that. Another question that we have, or another sort of topic pivoting a little bit, is sharing ways that you navigate parenting and professional responsibilities. Mari, you touched on that a bit with how you were really going to commit, and you were committed to nursing your daughter at a time when they didn't have the nursing rooms and what have you for moms. But some other things, if maybe that you could share on navigating parenting and professional growth, you know, as we're moving forward with this. And I will start with Silva and Viking.
So let me comment on this just a little bit in terms of navigating family and work demands. And it's interesting too, because when I first started, I worked for other people. And then as I got further and further along in my career over the last 20 years or 25 years, then people worked for me. And so what was interesting about all this is having your own family, and then maybe more sympathetic to your employees that, you know, the struggles they were going through as well. As we already said, it's not very easy. I think that one of the ways that I've looked at this is you have to be practical, and you have to be kind of look at the whole picture, the holistic, what's going on with this person, what's going on. We have kids running around in the background. Sorry.
You said do not come.
Yeah, don't come in this room. Exactly. Sorry. So anyway, so what we would end up doing is internally for us, Silva and I would really be very sensitive that big decisions of me taking more hours, or me doing, you know, moving our practice at one point, like in 2006, you know, we had a long conversation for months of, you know, what is this? What are the upsides of this? What are the downsides of this? You know, how are we going to brace for this in the short term? You know, I might not be around for, you know, 3 months at a time, you know, while we're going through all kinds of craziness. You know, can we handle it and kind of coordinate it so that nothing ever happens in a vacuum? Because the worst thing would be for me is to have this kind of thing happen and so be caught flat-footed.
And at that time, we had a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and a newborn. So it was just crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it, you know, definitely having an understanding and having an agreement, and then getting into something that I know we'll talk about later, but actually allowing to have some help come in, because me taking on the role of a full-time parent,
I
was
being
totally
MIA
racked,
for a while.
right, you being MIA, but just being racked with guilt that no, I took on this role. This is my role. This is my duty. I am the full-time parent right now. And yet realizing I can't handle it 100% all the
And
time.
sometimes things don't work out the way you plan, even though you plan and you discuss and whatever. We literally had a time where we ended up having a baby and moving my practice all at the same time, which was not supposed to be like that. And the house ended up delayed like 8 or 9 months. The practice got delayed 8 or 9 months. And suddenly we have a 6-week-old and we don't have anywhere to live. And I'm gone for long periods of time because the practice is moving locations after 30 years. So, I mean, the best laid plans don't always work out. But again, I got your back, it might be bad in 2 months, but it won't stay like this kind of thing, or let's pull your parents, let's get more help or whatever kind of thing makes it.
Well, what I'm hearing from you guys again is the teamwork and recognizing in that play and supporting each other in a variety of different ways will help you with that development going forward. And so that I think is a thread that goes through all that we're going to be talking about today. So thank you guys so much for that. Charla, do you have anything you want to add to that on that topic?
I think on growing your professional career, sometimes you're going to just have to be a little bit selfish. I remember I was very forward with my husband, a boyfriend at the time, about, I have these ambitions and I want to go to grad school and I want to do all this stuff. And like they were saying, best laid plans. I didn't know that I was going to become a step parent at that age. So I just say, you have to look at the long-term goals of like, I was sacrificing some time here and there with my partner and with him, with my stepson for grad school, for example, a lot of nights, a lot of weekend studying and whatnot, a lot of no sleep, but now it's paid off in terms of my career growth and whatnot. But I think just trying to think, 5 years ahead at least, and power through whatever moment you're in with your kids is key.
Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Mari?
I'll give you some comments on, the perspective of being an employee, but also being a leader. So as an employee, I'm learning to give myself grace. I think women in particular, we set these really high bars and very unrealistic expectations that we've got to do it all and it's got to be perfect. And there's a book that I'm reading that's called Present Over Perfect. And it talks really more about all these false narratives in our heads about all the things that we need to do, and it needs to be grand and big and we got to do it all. And our families, our children, our spouses, they want us to be well, and they just want to be with us. They don't need everything to be perfect and shiny, and they don't need us to make ourselves crazy like we do with all those expectations that really exist only in our own heads. They don't expect that. So I think that goes to really the importance of just having conversations about what our families need and what we need, and resetting those things and asking for help. Our spouses, our children are very resilient, and there's a lot that they can do for themselves, and they're willing to take on a lot more so that we can have more rest, more joy, and be more present and joyous when we're with them. So I think that's something that is really important for us to work on continuously. As a people leader, that's what we refer to it here at Blue Shield, but as a leader who has employees reporting to me, and I've always had men and women who are parents, I really strive to make it safe and comfortable for them to have conversations with me about how to get everything done that they need, not just at work, but at home too, because that whole separation of work and life, it's a fallacy. We bring our full selves to work, and all the stress and all the responsibilities that come with that. So I have very honest conversations with my employees about all of our commitments that we have in our lives. I talk very openly about my commitments and my struggles because that makes them feel more comfortable being human and talking about their struggles. And then we can get into a conversation about, well, what can I do to help you to meet your commitments and not work yourself to the ground? And I think both of those things are really, really important. Sometimes it's just being honest about our own struggles, just really changes the landscape and makes them feel comfortable having those conversations with us. And oftentimes it's just little things that we can do in partnership with them to make things so much better at home and at work. And then the stress level really decreases and the joy increases.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Charla, you mentioned that you're a step parent. What advice would you have for others regarding cultivating healthy relationships with their stepchildren, and how did you develop in your role as a stepmom to your son?
So I was fortunate in that he was so young that he's grown up in the situation, and he's known me as his stepmom, and he has his biological mom and her family, and he has myself and my husband. So it was, we got a lot of quality time early on. He was under 2. So there was a lot of probably imprinting in that regard. But I think the biggest thing I've learned over time, which I'm still learning, is it is so hard to sometimes let go. There's different households, different rules, different communication styles. Culturally, we're also a very mixed family. So I have really worked on, in the last probably 4 or 5 years, especially as he's gotten older, letting him communicate to his biological parents as much as possible. I try to serve as the sounding board for the in-between. Sometimes I'm the keeper of the in-between things that he wants to tell me or whatnot, and just try to be consistent. But it's something I think anyone who's doing a blended family, whether it's now or, none of us can see the future. You really got to figure out okay, focus on yourself, how you're going to react to that child, how they react to you, and the past relationship that resulted in that child, you kind of got to stay out of, because it can get so messy and it can get so tense between you and your partner. And, we've had our ups and downs from that, and it's taken a while to get to this point, but that would be my piece of advice for anybody who's co-parenting, foster parenting, step parenting.
Great advice. Thank you so much. Mari, you are proud that your daughter followed in your footsteps and graduated from UC Davis. What advice do you have from your experience encouraging your daughter through her college career, academically, physically, mentally? What advice can you share there?
I think the biggest thing that helped me was I think my daughter was entering high school when I learned about a parenting CD that a friend had, and I asked her if I could borrow it. And that CD was transformative. It really talked about as our children grow and mature, really how our parenting style had to mature and evolve with them. So it just clicked with me. It resonated, and that's the way that I managed or navigated my relationship with my daughter. I gave her more freedom and more responsibility as she got older. My family was very traditional, and we were to be seen and not really heard. And I don't believe in that. I believe that we need to listen and understand and have quality conversations with our children. And I got a lot of flack from family for that. And there was a question in the chat kind of about pushback from the family. She's my child, and I have the right to parent her the way that I feel is right. And it is none of my business what other people think about it. That's their opinion. And I've very nicely learned to tell family members that I appreciate that that's what worked for them. This is my child, and I am going to parent her in the way that I feel is right. And I respect that something different worked for you, and I need you to respect that this is my child, and I'm going to parent her the way that I feel is right. So in other words, like very nicely, like buzz off. And it's hard because sometimes it's your abuelita, your grandma, or your mom, or your tia. But you know what? You're an adult, and they need to respect that you're an adult now. So I tried to do the same thing for my daughter. And as she got older, when she turned 18, one of the things that I really had to accept is I don't get to tell her what to do as much now anymore, because I really wasn't doing that as much anymore in high school. My job is now a consultant. And my job is to listen, and sometimes it's just listen, full stop. Sometimes it's listen, and if she asks for my opinion or my guidance, provide it. If she doesn't, close my mouth and just listen. A lot of times she would call me and ask me for advice, ask me for guidance, and I needed to remember that she's not asking me to make a decision for her, and that's not helpful for me to make a decision for her. My job is to equip her to be a productive, successful adult. And so, you know, I've learned and have been pretty successful at giving advice and guidance when she asks for it, keeping my mouth closed when she doesn't. And unless I feel like she's really going to do something that's going to be very damaging to her, letting her make her decisions, letting her make some mistakes, and then being here to love her and support her through recovering from her mistakes without saying I told you so, without being judgy, just loving her. And we've had some really tough times because she has struggled with depression and anxiety since high school on and off, and there have been some hospitalizations. There was a suicide attempt. So it has not been easy. I don't want it to seem like, oh yeah, it was great, everything was it was hard. The last time when she was in the hospital was after her suicide attempt. That was on a Saturday night, and she was in ICU for like 3 days, and then she went from there to inpatient psych for a couple more days. I think she got out like that following Friday. She decided she was going to go back to school the following Monday, and I was an hour away, and I told her, you know, are you sure you want to do that? Maybe you should take a planned educational leave and focus on your health. Again, to being a consultant, she absolutely was adamant she wanted to go to school. I needed to respect that. She's an adult. So I did. And then my request of her was, I'm going to text you periodically just so I feel like it'll make me feel more comfortable that you're safe. And she, talking about boundaries, she looks me right in the face and she said, absolutely not. She said, I am working on boundaries and I will do no such thing. I didn't like that. I didn't have a nice response to that. So I said nothing. I just accepted that she's my adult daughter and I will be here, and I'll need to find a way to make my own peace with her decision, and I will continue to be here if she falls down again, and just make sure that she has access to mental health care and other care that she needs. So I share that level of detail to just reiterate, it has not been easy. My instinct has been to like shield her from, you know, the kicks that life gives you in the teeth, but that's not how you raise adults that are capable and can navigate the world successfully. But that's been my approach.
Thank you, Mari, so much for talking about that, because mental health is such an important topic, and I'm so glad that you were open to sharing that with all of us today and to touch on that. Especially now, I think that there are struggles that that many people are dealing with that they didn't face before because of where we are with the pandemic and everything else. And we'll touch on that a little bit more later, but thank you so much for that. Silva and Viking, as parents of 3 children, how do you manage sibling conflict and childcare issues?
I wanted to add one thing to dovetail with what Mari was saying and also Charla was saying.
Absolutely.
And then also there was a response also, or a question in the list as well, in the Q&A list we were going to touch on. But one thing was, I think Mari brought this up, you know, you can't do everything. You can't do everything. You shouldn't try to do everything. One of the most important things that we did is start to figure out what priorities were. I mean, everyone's doing sports, we better do sports. Everyone's doing piano, we better do that. We better do this, we better do that. We better run all over the place, and everyone has to be perfect and everything has to be, you know, all the I's dotted and T's crossed. And we kind of came to a point, I don't know, reasonably early on, we're like, this is insane. We have 3 kids and you can't, a good example was this. Each kid wanted to do like 2 activities after school. With 3 kids, it's 6 activities. And
even if I'm a full-time parent,
it's just like, this is totally unrealistic. Yeah. So one of the things that we kind of had a gut check on, and we've had this gut check a couple of times now, was to decide what's really important. If you can get rid of 1/3 of the things on your list because they're stressing you out and you realize, oh, that's actually not that important, then you just made yourself so much happier in your kids too, because I think, again, back to what Mari was saying, is that you don't need to do everything. You need to be engaged. You need to be able to talk to your kids. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be at a early morning running around on Saturday doing all kinds of stupid things. It could just be that you're actually having dinner together most of the time, as much as we could.
Or and to touch upon what Charla said too, it's also about being quote unquote selfish. You have to give some time for yourself too.
Right.
Whether I love to do yoga, you've got to do yoga. Kids, stay out. Mom needs an hour.
Get some exercise.
Get some exercise. That mental, the mental health is so important on so many levels.
One sort of semi-selfish thing that we started doing several years ago is, I'd come home frustrated, or Silva would come home frustrated. And instead of engaging with each other like that, or engaging when you're frustrated with the kids, we started this little tradition for a while. We still do it mostly, is I'd come home from work, she'd say hi, and say, here, we just sit down for half an hour and have a glass of wine together. Every single night, or whatever your drink of choice is, for half an hour, and just take the anxiety and frustration level from here.
Yeah.
And in half an hour it would be here, and then we'd be like, okay, this is
bring
what
it
happened.
on.
Bring it on, yeah. We try to figure out what to do with it. Do you want to talk about the one topic that was asked?
Yeah, Cheryl, would you like me to touch upon something that was asked by an audience
Specifically
member,
to her.
or go into?
Yeah, so let me just, so thank you. This is a good segue a little bit. Just a reminder, folks, use that Q&A button if you have any questions that you would like to ask of our panelists. You can put those in there. We will get to as many as possible, but go ahead, Silva, just if you see something in there that sort of, relays into what you guys are talking about with the question about childcare issues, conflict, and how are you dealing with those sorts of things, please feel free to go ahead and answer that now.
Well, it was specifically a question from one of the audience members about leaving your career behind and the guilt and just the feelings associated with that. And yeah, you work hard to get your degree, to get your graduate degree, and then you come to this place where you say, no, I can do it all. But for me, I think the person in the audience, they actually were raising their children and stayed within their career. And then finally around 10 years into this decided, I don't see how I can do it all. And I say to you, don't worry, what you've achieved so far is so great, but the kids, it's such a short amount of time too. And I know we're all educated and we've all worked so hard to get to where we are, but the well-being of our kids is really important. And I've seen many of my friends do the juggling act and do it beautifully. But again, you need those wonderful people to help you and support you in finding the right nannies, the right helpers, or if your parents are willing, which ours kind of weren't, just based on, they were older. Our parents are a little bit older now. His mother has a rare eye disease, so she technically can't see. So, I mean, it sounds picture perfect. Oh, everybody's around. But honestly, at the end of the day, it's about us and about what we can do and what's good for our family and what is sane. And we came to that decision of, hey, if we want to have this bigger family, Are you willing? Yes, I'm willing. Did I struggle with it sometimes? Absolutely. Especially earlier on as a brand new mom, feeling frustrated. No, I still want to do this. I still want to do that. My skills are going to wane. I'm going to be out of the market. I'm not going to be marketable. Things like that have definitely swirled around, but getting back involved and doing things, not just within the children's school, which I did infinitely from room mom and PTA and this and that, I've done all that. But as far as for me personally, getting back involved with UCI has been wonderful. Things that are powerful and meaningful to me. And the kids really appreciate that too. They see that other side of me, and being involved in numerous panels and Zoom calls and working with the professors at UCI and all the wonderful people at the Alumni Association and meeting so many people from the other chapters and all this incredible talent inspires me. So yeah, down the road, I still am thinking about going back to work someday, but now I'm in this joint venture with my daughter. So we'll see where that takes us. But constantly learning, is a big thing, and not feeling like you've thrown it all away. You haven't. It's all part of the process and part of the journey of life.
I think Silva was pleasantly surprised 2 years ago, when 2 or 3 years ago, when you're like, okay, the kids are finally out of elementary school. I want to dip my toes back into the, to the work environment, talk to adults more instead of just talking to kids all the time. And so she was feeling really guilty about, I don't have my skills, or old, I can't, I'm not going to be, and we basically, what we decided is do things that you might think are fun and things that are more volunteer the first year, just to see how you handle it. And she was very pleasantly surprised at the feedback she got, and she got further and further and further into it over the last few years. And the kids have been supportive too, because they came to realize that, hey, if your mom is happy and challenged and is excited by what she's doing, then she's a better mom too.
That's fantastic. I think that's fantastic, and that definitely reinforces the need for your own self-fulfillment that I think Charla and Mari talked about earlier on, is that it makes you better holistically when you're happy yourself and not just sort of running through the motions. And so it makes you more present in those things. So I think a lot of the things that we've touched on today really have all been our life experiences, but then have also been sort of flipped upside down and turned left, right, with the current situation. And so I think we'd be remiss if we don't talk about how we are parenting in COVID during the pandemic, how things have been turned upside down, and just how we're making it through. If there's any piece of advice that you can give anyone, I know that LAUSD schools started back yesterday. My son starts back next week. I know there's a lot of anxiety with all of that sort of thing, and just anything that you guys can share about how you've managed parenting through the pandemic. And the reality is that, I know that Mari, for example, you have an adult daughter. Well, parenting doesn't stop just because your kid turns 18, right? So, any advice, any just, message. I mean, some of it is just a commiseration. It's hard. It is very hard. My husband has had to go to work every day out of our home. So it's been me and he was 6 when this all started. Now he's 8. And dealing with all of that. So anything that you guys can share about your experiences there, feel free, jump on in. Maybe we'll go Charla first, and then I'm going to start going to some more of these questions that we have.
So for me, the pandemic was a total lifestyle change, working in PR and doing events and being out in the community and working, being out of the home most of the time. And our daughter was in preschool. Our son was going into 6th grade, or he was in 6th grade. And then shutdown happened. Now I'm homeschooling, or virtually assisting a 7th grader through middle school, and try to take care of a 4-year-old. Me being the person I am, I'm thinking I could just do it all. I'm okay. My husband works outside the home. We got this. Well, about summer, probably August, we're like, no, we don't have this. Like, it's not changing. We don't have this. So we found a wonderful nanny who we love, and for my daughter, because we also have some immune compromised, myself included, folks in my family. And that really helped. And I will say also, luckily where we live, there's a neighborhood. I think everyone knows it takes a village. And we had a neighborhood of people who was just like, listen, you could almost look at people and be like, I'm going insane. Can you take my kid to the park for a little with your kid? Or can we, you know, do you have milk? I feel like that's the beauty of the pandemic. It made people's neighborhoods stronger, and it made parents, in my case at least, slow down a little bit more and have time to spend with their kids. It's an ongoing thing. Now I'm kind of craving like, okay, I want to kind of get back out in there. But I think also Silva, they spoke to this. You can't overschedule yourself for your kids because anything's going to happen. And I think the pandemic purposefully showed us that we have to slow down. And that's been a big lesson for our family. We also try to have dinner together as much as possible. And we try to focus on a good thing. We go around the table and say one good thing that's happened to us during the day, because there's so much negativity and our children are such different ages. We want to focus on a good thing. So my daughter's good thing could be, I played with Play-Doh with my nanny, and my son is like, I did this in gaming, or I went to the skate park and I nailed this trick. So we try to focus on that.
That's phenomenal. Thank you. I'll be using that one at dinner tonight. One good thing. Mari?
Us too.
Yeah, so my daughter was in grad school last year. So I was parenting an adult child whose dream of moving to the East Coast and getting the Harvard experience died a quick death. And she actually, I feel like she went through a mourning period where she was really sad that that dream died because she had her whole plan laid out. So I needed to parent her through coming to accept that, and then coming to accept that her entire one-year graduate program was going to be virtual, and her graduation was virtual. So again, because she was an adult, I just tried to be there for her and be a sounding board. I tried to help her to really get perspective, safety first. And yeah, this stinks, but safety first, and find the things that give you joy. Go take the dog for a walk, take a bubble bath, do this and that. The other thing that was interesting was, because she didn't move across the country for graduate school, she ended up staying in Davis. She had taken a bridge year, or a break for a year between undergrad and graduate school, and she graduated from Davis, so she just stayed there. But during the pandemic, she came home a lot more, which was great, but sometimes it wasn't so great because she's very messy, and she's got her dog, which sheds a lot. And I don't have a dog and I don't have pets because I don't want dogs that shed a lot. So I just needed to remind myself of what really matters in life, and dog hairs on my couch and on my clothes does not matter. I can wash them, I can get new ones. What matters is that my daughter is supported and safe and happy, and that I get to see her more. But there were many times that I had to bite my tongue and just like remember priorities. I also, at the same time that I was parenting her through the pandemic, I started getting the blues too, because I was sheltering when she wasn't here. I was sheltering alone, and it got really lonely. And then my paternal grandfather died, so it triggered a lot of grief that I had been carrying all my life, that I guess I had been suppressing, and that just like blew it all out of the water. So I actually started seeing a therapist to deal with my mental health issues and my grief. And it has been really, really good. She's now in Texas because she graduated this May and got a job over there. So I continue to parent her, and Texas is Texas, and they're dealing with the pandemic very differently than California. And so part of what I deal with now is most recent time when I got a kind of a panicked call was when her peers had face-to-face interaction with a student that tested positive for COVID. So she was really panicked about that. But, we just work through it. The only thing else that I'll add is I've also been a leader working with employees who have families and who are parenting during the pandemic. And I'd like to say a couple things about that. And that's just, again, continue to make it safe for your employees to talk with you about the many things that they are trying to juggle. And it is really, really hard. I have a lot of peers and employees who will apologize when the baby starts crying, or when the dog starts barking, or when the doorbell rings. And I just really try to tell them, all that doesn't matter. I mean, this is our new normal, and you have children, they're gonna cry. And we have, life happens, it's okay, it's no big deal. Like, so just make it okay that when those things happen, it's no big deal. I really emphasize to employees, block off time during the lunch hour, just show it busy every day, and go take a break, do what you need to do. Give yourself nourishment, go breathe, whatever you need to do, block that time and protect it. It's really important that as leaders, we also make it safe and give our employees permission to take care of themselves and their families.
No, Maria, I agree with you 100%, and thank you so much for that. And this goes to one of the questions that's in the chat that talks about, there was a question about really how to operate sort of in a very competitive environment when you're also trying to straddle these different things that are happening, that we're dealing with in our family lives, right? And so I'm a litigator, that's my day job. I am the chair of my department, which is the LA litigation department at my firm. And for me, it was, and I'm currently serving as a voting UC Regent. And my first Regents meeting last year, my then just turned 7-year-old popped on in the background, and I'm like, great, this is a public meeting, and here's my 7-year-old. And I was like, oh, my coworker, here we go, and it's fine. And for me, the things that I try to do to make other people comfortable is, like, I will call the associates in our groups, the folks who I know have young children. It's not easy, right? So I'll call them, check in. How are you doing? What do you need? Tell me about your cases. Tell me about your family, just whatever it is, to give them that outlet, to let them know it's okay. We are all juggling and struggling. And I'll share some of my, whatever it is, struggles, for the day. My son volunteered, which is great, to do a project, an extra credit project. He volunteered. He asked the teacher if he could do it. And I was like, wait, you didn't tell me that we were doing this, because I have to help you set up the PowerPoint, right? But, just dealing with those things, hey, great, that gave me an opportunity to teach him a new skill. He now knows how to set up his own PowerPoint for his virtual, presentations. But having those check-in conversations too with people is really important. My department, obviously litigation, is very competitive in the sense that we are literally fighting all day, every day with opposing counsel and other parties. And how do you balance that? How do you get ahead? I would say that part of what you should also realize is that having these multiple roles is an asset. Okay, it is not something that detracts from what you can do in your work life. It gives you a different skill set. And so starting to view it as an asset that gives you a perspective that is different from maybe some of your coworkers is, look at that as a positive, and how can you take that positive to impact your work environment, right? You have a whole host of new sets of time management. You have a whole host of sets on how to, de-escalate conflict, all sorts of different things that can serve you well in your workplace. And so try and look at the positives of that and how you can use those skills in your work life, and spin that potential negative as a positive. So I will kick it to Silva and Viking to talk about, sort of parenting through the pandemic. And if there are any questions, that pop up that sort of resonate with you in dealing with that, please feel free to answer those as well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to be in this house with everybody on a computer and all these voices, and it was nice to be able to. And I cannot deny, and I know it was extremely difficult for so many people, but we have a backyard, we have somewhere where they can get out and breathe a little bit, and being glued to those screens was definitely detrimental to everyone's mental health. energy levels. But yeah, dealing with that and then making sure that we, you know, because weekend was, yeah, you were home the whole.
I was home
yeah,
for a big
yeah.
chunk of it. Yeah, it really affected my company a lot. So
Yeah.
everybody went home for a long time. One thing that was interesting though is you don't get a chance in life for all the terrible things that have happened, and even people that we know that passed on from the, you know, from COVID. You don't get a chance in your life very often to sort of step outside of your normal grind and your normal routine and look at everything again. I mean, we rode bikes more in the last year than in the last decade. We baked more in the last year than in the last decade. I mean, paid for it, that a little bit, of course. But just my threshold for me, for my family and for Silva and for my employees at my work is one simple thing. When you're doing it, be engaged. Don't do it half-assed. Don't do it, you know, it doesn't matter, as Mari was saying, it doesn't matter if there's noise in the background or maybe Charla or something was saying, if there's noise in the background or dogs barking, but when you're actually doing it, if you are engaged and you're actually following through, then that's all that counts. Same with when we have time with the kids. During the pandemic, that's what was one nice thing about it, was we got a lot more family time than usual. And we started looking at this and going, wow, we can really distill down what's important and all the stupid things we've been running around for no reason.
But let's be honest, it definitely affected. I mean, our daughter, who was a senior, yeah, it was not the best senior year, but we can't complain. They were able to have a graduation and all of that. For the younger two, it was definitely harder, especially our youngest.
Schooling was really hard.
And I mean, his grades were just atrocious, and you know,
every time you walk in, it was very tempting to be on video games instead of on your webinar or your Zoom call. Always. I wanted things that when we could go to the skate park, or we could, you know, meet with friends, because for so long everyone was obviously and understandably completely cautious. Once they were able to resume a little bit of normalcy, then it's like the clouds lifted. But no, we know it's been incredibly hard for so many people. Yeah.
So
you make lemons you're dealt with.
Absolutely. So jumping into some of the additional questions, one that I see here is it says, I appreciate everyone bringing up boundaries. When they bring these up, sort of other generations don't see that. And I think Mari touched on that. And one thing that I will add there is how do you push back from people who don't understand or didn't use boundaries when they were parenting? I think Mari is exactly right. This is what I think is best for me and my child, and that's what we're going to do. Thank you, respectfully, but you know, we're doing it a little bit differently. I think the other part too is they don't need to understand. They just need to know that you have them. These are my boundaries and that's it. You don't have to explain why and the rationale, because the reality is you're probably not going to convince them that your way is the right way, because they had a different experience, and that's okay. It's just different. Just repeatedly, I think, reinforce what your boundaries are, and that whether you disagree with them or not, this is what it is, you know. And so this is how we, as Charla said, make it work, right? This is how we make it work. These are our boundaries. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to add to that. I think Mari summarized it really well earlier with her examples on how she did that. But that's just my 2 cents, is that you don't have to explain the why, just that this is how it is.
We had the same experience, like I said, with our families wanting to stick their fingers in everything, every decision, from having a third kid to, you know, buying a house or whatever, all kinds of stuff. The parents just would stick. They're very old school, in a very nice way, but just very old school. And we had the same thing where it was like, we got it, you know, you have to trust us. We're adults. We managed to figure it out this long. You've got to set boundaries nicely, respectfully. It took some time.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to get to, there were a few questions that were submitted during the registration process, so I did want to get into some of those as well. One of the questions is, and we are running a little bit out of time, so this may be our last question, but, and I think, Charla, you maybe touched on a way to do this, but I'll throw this question out there. It says, I'm exhausted at the end of the workday and struggle with keeping up with my young child. I don't want to miss connections, but I'm not sure how to create space when I'm an introvert and my child is very much an extrovert, and I just don't have the bandwidth to listen to any more words. Suggestions?
So
Does
I have,
anyone want to?
I have a child like that. My 4-year-old is a big extrovert. I would say I'm more of an ambivert. That whole sleep when the baby sleeps theory, I never stopped that, to be honest with you. I sleep when she sleeps. I go to bed early when she does. I wake up a little bit before her. I power nap when I can, so I can have energy to engage with her, because like Viking was saying, it's like I want to be 100% with her. I don't want to be checking my phone. I don't want to be looking at Instagram or looking at my emails or FaceTiming my parents. So I try to like take my cues from her and how her body's working so that I can keep up with her. So if she's resting or reading a book, I'm like, okay, we're going to rest together. Or if she wants to go play, I really try to do mirror her. I don't know if it's, my husband might say it's maybe mirroring her too much, but it helps me keep up with her and keeps her curiosity going.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for that. Another is how do you talk to your partner about doing their part in parenting and managing the home when both parents work? How can I get my husband to take on more family and home duties when he's gotten used to me working from home and taking care of all of the household and parenting duties? On my end, I'll say that my husband has been phenomenal, and I've been so lucky to have that family support with my mom and my husband when I have, you know, things that I have to do and I can't get off of, you know, I can't manage virtual school when I have a video deposition, right? And so I've had that help where he's taken off of work because he can't work remotely, and he's taken care of that. He, you know, has always helped with different things around the house, but that has changed on what we need because I am here all day. Like I can't leave the dishes in the sink all day if I see them there. Like I'll load the dishwasher. So we've just sort of pivoted a bit to what we're doing and how we're supporting one another. But you know, how do you do that? I think it has to be a real, you know, a real conversation, not something in passing, but to take the time to sit down and say, hey, look, I know X, but you know, as things get back to this is what we have to get back. We have to find a new normal now. Again, anyone else want to chime in on that? Cool. Well, I think I think we are coming close to time. So I really do want to thank everyone for signing in and signing up for this webinar. And I really want to thank our panelists for being here and spending so much time and being so open and transparent and sharing so much of themselves and their lives and their personal, you know, struggles and successes in the parenting work world. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of the insight, all of the questions, all of the comments. I hope this session has been as helpful for everyone online as it has been for me. And just hearing other people's stories can be so helpful in understanding and charting my own journey. So I hope that you too have had that experience. On behalf of the University of California, thank you for joining us today for our UC Alumni Career Network webinar. It was a pleasure to connect with you virtually. And we appreciate you making time to be part of today's event and hope you've gained valuable insights and strategies to navigate parenting and work. I'd really like to thank again Charla, Silva, Viking, and Mari for their time, generosity, and commitment to the University of California. The insights and advice you each have shared today make me especially proud to be part of the UC community. To all of our attendees, I hope you will take a few minutes to provide your feedback on today's event by following the survey link that appeared in your browser when you launched today's webinar. The feedback you provide will help improve the series and help the organizers select topics for upcoming sessions. Please visit ucal.us/ACN for details on upcoming webinars. And thank you again for joining today. And we really appreciate your time to all of our panelists and for being so open and sharing so much with us. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.